blizzard, but if you smell it, it's in the air. We're right around the corner of the NCAA tournament, just 9 days away from Selection Sunday, and we bring in our very own incredible bracketologist, Mr. Tim Krueger. Tim, how are you doing, my man?
Hanging in there.
Yeah?
It was a long night last night in our mock selection committee, but we're doing well, and we're right on schedule and doing fine. We're ready for another big session tonight.
You have been busy. You have a full mock bracket that you guys just made. Before we get into the nitty-gritty of it and where you're looking at certain teams and their resumes and certain matchups and whatnot, I got to ask you first, because this doesn't happen a whole lot. Red, black, and blue Nebraska all in contention to make the NCAA tournament. Omaha's got to win 2 games in the Summit to do it. Creighton is basically locked. It's a matter of where they're seated, and Nebraska might have some work to do. Where do you have those 3 teams, and just what is the outlook for all 3 of them heading into their, Omaha already in it, but Creighton and Nebraska about to head into their conference tourneys?
Yeah, let's start with Omaha.
Yeah.
Big move. Just let me explain. So part of we do this mock selection. We do it in like 24 hours over 4 days, where the committee spends probably 60 plus hours. So we have to take a little shortcut. So we have a little subcommittee that kind of puts together the mid-major AQs, da-da-da-da-da. And after a lot of discussion, and I kind of agreed, and I was on the cusp of doing it, my bracket this morning that came out of Bracketville, I moved Omaha to number 15 in the 15 line. So they moved up. They're out of the 16. They're into the 15. So they're in.
That's awesome. I mean, that's something. That's a big move there. I mean, especially against these 1 seeds too.
Right. And, the other thing too is we talked about earlier is there's always upsets in these tournaments. So eventually, if Omaha does get in, they're going to move up. They're not going to go down. They're going to move up because these teams with 300 nets all upset and win these tournaments.
Sure,
so they're going to be the 68, 67s. At any rate, so Omaha's 15. And then I still have Nebraska as the last team in.
Wow. Okay, Tim. You're speaking our language.
Their resume is it's just better than most. And so, and look, I know people think the committee sets up matchups. I know they think we do. We do not. I don't know it until the bracket's done. A lot of times I won't even realize it until somebody points it out.
Mm-hmm.
But we got the old football rivalry, Nebraska and Oklahoma.
Wow.
So.
I was going to ask you about this. I was going to ask for a little bit later, but I mean, we're on it now. So I was looking at the bubble team resumes, right? And when you look at them, Nebraska is pretty impressive in terms of their quad 1 wins. I think they still have 5 right now. And then overall, their quad 1 and quad 2 record are very comparable to people that are, teams that are even on the 9 line. They're 2 quad 3 losses. Is that how big of a mover has that been for them being the last team in?
Not much.
Okay.
Good wins help you way more than bad losses do. And I know even in our discussion last night in our mock selection committee, those bad losses came up once in a while. I always kind of cringe a little bit, because if you look through the history of the NCAA tournament and teams getting in, have teams having 2 quad 3 losses, and you kind of have to drill down too. Those are above 100 losses. So they're not horrible. Now, they were at home. That hurts, right?
Yeah.
So, but they're not horrible. When you start seeing 3 little red dots over on that 3 and 4 side, then that's when you get worried. And I don't think Nebraska will have an opportunity for one of those anymore, so I think they're safe there. I think the thing that's holding them back right now is record. Okay? Yeah. And that sounds silly because you look at everything else, but 17 and 13, okay, they're right on the precipice. They're going to have one more loss to be an at-large, right? That puts them at 14. 14's the danger zone. You go to 15, I think maybe one team has gotten in with 15 losses. I think that was Vanderbilt a few years ago, but they had 21 wins.
Yeah.
And played the toughest schedule in the country, okay?
Yeah. Good point.
They're at 13, so they're going to have one more. That's 14. So obviously they cannot lose to Iowa.
Mm-hmm.
That loss would pretty much seal their fate.
Okay. Do they need? Would they need to win in the? Would they need to win in the Big Ten Conference tourney?
Yeah, that's hard to say. It depends on who they play. Obviously, their first game, they'll have a team that they're very capable of beating. I think the other thing my partner Dave over at Bracketville looked up was that the only team to get in like the last 5 years or so with 14 losses had 19 wins.
Okay.
And that was like a Michigan State team, and they had a pretty good resume. Now, Nebraska's is maybe not quite as good as theirs, but it's there. The metric numbers for Nebraska are kind of hurting them a little bit right now. They got, 51 in KenPom. We had a discussion last night about WAB. It's a new metric that's on the team sheet. It's a win above the bubble. Oh. And they're at 55, which would mean they're underwater on that. 45 is like the level.
Okay.
I think even the NCAA uses 40. So they're quite a bit under the water there. So that's kind of a little bit of a problem. So if they want to feel safe, two things have to happen. One, obviously they got to beat Iowa. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Two, they need to win a couple in the Big Ten tournament and hope that the committee takes those games with a little bit of weight on them. And if they do, they'll be okay. They have a couple things in their favor. One, the team that I have them paired against, Oklahoma, plays Texas Saturday. That's basically a loser out game.
Yeah.
Oklahoma already is in trouble, although conference record is not taken into consideration. We talked about this, I think, last week. Mm-hmm. They are at 5-13. 5-12.
Yeah.
If they lose, they'll be 5-13. That means they started their conference right after their first of the year. I keep harping on this. So that means right now, so we'd sit right today, the second, they've won 28% of their games from January 1st. Now, yes, they're playing in the toughest conference we probably ever had. So that has to be taken into consideration. Their resume overall is better than Nebraska's, and they have more quality wins. But I can't believe that in a committee room somebody won't bring up that fact. So it's really big game for them. Texas is on the outside looking in. They have to have a win. So one of those teams will be knocked out, and so that'll help them. The other team to watch, there's two other teams to watch, Boise State. I'm not quite sure who they play tomorrow, but if they lose, that would be huge for Nebraska as well. You do not want North Carolina to beat Duke.
Yeah. Great point. Because they're
North Carolina beating Duke would probably, I think in most people's minds, edge them in because that's what's holding them back.
Yeah.
They have great computer numbers. They've won one game in quad one.
Is that, are they on the first four out? Where are they at for you right now?
First four out, yeah.
Okay.
Their other stuff is too good to overlook.
Sure.
But, because they're 38 in the net.
That's crazy.
All of their numbers are really good.
I don't get the net.
But they have one win in the top in Q1, and I don't even know if 2 wins are going to save. Now they're undefeated in quad 2, 6-0. So overall they're 7-10, which obviously isn't horrible. They too have a bad loss, losing to Stanford at home. But they just haven't beaten anybody. I mean, they only have one win against the field, and that's UCLA. So even if they got one more win against Duke, that would be 2 wins against the field. That's still not in very good territory. So they're still iffy. Now, what's going on with them? They played the 5th toughest non-conference schedule in the country. So
they did play a tough one.
The other team that I think is definitely at play here, and we're not going to find this out till next week, and that's Xavier. Mm-hmm. Xavier, again, same boat as Nebraska, has only that one quad 1 win. They, however, have, I believe, 4 wins against the field because they've got wins over Creighton, they've got wins over UConn. So they're in better shape in that regards. The other thing that they're way better shape in, they have a golden opportunity in the Big East tournament because it's going to be probably, I don't think UConn's going to lose to Seton Hall again, so I can say with certainty it's going to be Xavier. It's going to be Xavier and Marquette in the first game.
Tim, you
4-5 game.
You do this bracketology, and a lot of people start to take it in over like the last month of the season in the same way that if there's a storm coming, they start to all become local meteorologists.
Mm-hmm.
When we look at this, and especially Husker fans look at the bubble and say, 4-game losing streak, lost 5 of the last 6, had a 6-game losing streak before they had a 1-4 in a row. They look at Nebraska and say, this isn't a tournament team. They don't look like a tournament team. How weak does the overall bubble look this year that keeps teams like Nebraska and Oklahoma and Texas and North Carolina with a chance going into this weekend?
Horrendously weak. Yeah, it's probably the weakest I've ever seen. Like, there's teams, you're right. Normally, Nebraska, Oklahoma would not be even in the mix.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Indiana, you could still make a case for because they have some high-quality wins. San Diego's my other team, San Diego State. They just haven't their record's fine. They just haven't beat that many quality teams. So, but anyway, yeah, Nebraska's got to watch out for Xavier because next week, because if Xavier beats Marquette and then they play St. John's, if they won that game, they're in. They'd have, that would be 6 quality wins against the field. That would be too much to overcome. But so, it's going to be. I would get, if I'm projecting, I would guess North Carolina's not going to be Duke. So that pretty much rules them out because they got nothing to play. They don't have any quality teams that are going to play in the ACC. Xavier would be the one to watch for. Boise could be. They could get some more quality wins in the Mountain West. So those would be the ones. And here's the other thing too. Let's be real. My partner Dave always talks about this too. We're probably going to lose a couple of bids here. Mm-hmm. Somebody's going to come along in the A10 or the AAC and win that conference and kick somebody out. So if that happens, then they're in big trouble. Plus, we haven't really, I don't really see it, but a lot of people do. Drake has a chance with their tremendous record and season, and they did beat Vanderbilt. They have a chance to edge in. How is the committee going to view them? I know there are some mid-major athletic directors on that committee this year, so that's a possibility.
Hey, Tim, so two-parter here for you. And by the way, Tim Krueger, a bracketologist from Bracketville. Tim, who are the 1 seeds, and what are some interesting seeds that you might have that maybe you are a little bit higher on them or you guys are a little bit lower on them than some other bracketologists out there?
Sure. Yeah. Great question. So last night, we actually we have 40 teams in the field, so we still got to kind of do the bubble teams in. We'll discuss tonight. And we did seed the top 3 lines though, and they came almost exactly how I had it. Just I think 1 team flipped around. So it's going to go Auburn, Duke, Houston, and then Florida.
Okay.
So that's pretty much standard with everyone right now. Florida's big win the other night, really, since that.
Yep.
The second seeds go Alabama, Tennessee, Michigan State. Those are the easy ones. The last number 2 is kind of a coin flip. We went Texas Tech. That's who I have.
Okay.
There was some play for A&M. There was some play for St. John's. There was some play for a few other teams. And then the 3 seeds, let me pull up. I don't remember exactly how we had the 3s. The 3s ended up, surprisingly to me a little bit, was Kentucky. I have Kentucky lower.
Oh. Okay.
I have them like the number 1-4. But they were the number 1 3 seed. And then St. John's, Wisconsin, Texas A&M. I think Wisconsin, A&M, St. John's are all within a 1 or 2 places where I have them. That's fine. Kentucky was a little jump. I see why they had Kentucky. I mean, they just have so many high quality wins.
Yeah.
On the resume.
Yeah,
So
it's
not crazy, but that's kind of where they sit. Interesting discussion though. Like you mentioned Creighton earlier. I was interested to see how the group did, and nationally too. I think they're really not valuing Creighton, because I think if you polled Big East people, most people would say Creighton is a second. I mean, UConn, Marquette, and Creighton are really close, but I think most people would say Creighton's the second best team, and they're probably going to be the second best team in the standings too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and yet they're not getting much love.
Yeah,
last night they didn't get much love. Like, I kind of foresee the fact that this group, our mock selection, is going to put them a 9 seed.
Really?
Which I think that's crazy.
Crazy?
Low.
No way.
Now, if you're going to put them in 8, 9, doesn't really matter, right?
Yeah.
You know what color jersey you're wearing, but I just think they're undervalued, and the issue is just the fact they just don't have the depth of quality wins.
Yeah.
And that's what's holding them back. But you are going to have a couple of Big East, the Georgetown ADs on there, plus Stu Jackson, who used to be assistant head of the Big East and now is in WCC. He's on the committee as well, so he follows the Big East closely. So you are going to have 2 Big East guys on that committee, basically. So that will help out.
Okay.
Their computer numbers get better and better every day. But I get it though. Again, we've talked about this. They're in that situation where the 8, 7s, and 6s, and even it drifting into the 5s a little bit, they're all lumped together. They all have the same record, basically.
Yeah.
Basically the same resume. Some have a few better wins, some don't. You sprinkle in a St. Mary's and Gonzaga in that thing that have more wins, but not quality wins. It's hard to move up because it's just, nobody's taking a big fall and nobody's taking a big rise.
The lines are definitely
stuck in the mud.
The lines kind of get blurred a little bit, right, between the Louisvilles and Mississippis and UCLA's and Illinois and Kansas's and Mississippi States, right? Like, they're kind of all good, not great, have good wins, have some bad weeks or whatnot. But, like, that's a great analysis, Tim. Like, it really is. There's 3 tiers to this. There is the top of the top. Then when you kind of get past that 4 line, you have 5, 6, 7, which are all quality, and then the bottom kind of falls out when you get toward the bubble of the 9, 10, and 11. I mean, it's a very,
very good point. Very good point.
Yeah, it's a very interesting kind of bracket. You kind of have to put together. I want to ask you before we let you go here. Last question: Tim Krueger at Bracketville, our bracketologist, you've been doing an awesome job for us all season long. So I want to thank you for that, Tim. Local question. So you have Omaha, you have Lincoln, and you have Creighton. And you have 3 head coaches who are all on kind of different trajectories right now. You have Chris Crutchfield, who's done an incredible job with the Omaha program. I'm sure that when, some other jobs around the country open up, that his name is going to get thrown out there. You have Fred Hoiberg, who is in his 6th season, who very well, is on the hot seat, at this point after their kind of disappointing end to the season. We'll see what happens against Iowa and in the Big Ten Conference tourney. And then you have Coach Greg McDermott, who's been at Creighton for a real long time. And, there hasn't been a lot of rumblings of his name in the Indiana job or anything like that. But, it has been, quite the ride for Coach Mack at Creighton. My question to you, Tim, is do you think there is a possibility that at this time or maybe in the beginning of next season, there are 3 brand new head coaches for all Nebraska college basketball teams?
I don't see Hoiberg so much on a hot seat.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
I just think, I don't know what I don't think the expectations were huge this year, but
sure.
Hey, I know there's a past athletic director, what did he say? Be competitive and beat Creighton. I think that was his goal. So
they did. He's done both of them.
Down, right?
Yeah. Good point. That's a great point.
So I think he's okay.
Okay.
And I'm not sure man, when you replace somebody like what Fred Hoiberg has done, and not that he's, got Sweet 16s or anything, but just he's done a good job. He's having them in the hunt for NCAA berths where a lot of years they weren't. So when you roll the dice and want to replace somebody like that, man, you better have the right guy. You know, it's kind of like
point.
in the NFL when you go free agents to pick that quarterback, he better be the guy or you're screwed. You know.
Yeah. Sure.
I think I hope Crutchfield stays around another year because I've seen this happen too many times where a one-season guy does a tremendous job, and then somebody comes calling because they're looking for the next, gold mine, right? And they take that coach, and it's I don't want to say too big a leap, but it just isn't a good fit. Maybe it's a different program. I hope he stays there and does it for a couple of years.
Yeah.
We've seen, Prom over at Iowa State was a perfect example. A guy had 1 or 2 good years. Oh, well, let's put him at Iowa State, and he just failed miserably. Greg McDermott's an interesting case. I haven't heard his name sprinkled out there for Indiana, but I don't see that happening.
Yeah.
He's getting toward the end of his career. Of course, they all say that. Dana Altman said he was going to retire 10 years ago, and he's still going strong. So I think he's I think he's probably, he wants that Final Four.
Yeah.
I think the other title that he'd really like to get is the postseason Big East tourney title. I really love their path this year.
Okay,
I like
Tim. All right.
They stay away from red hot Xavier.
Yeah.
They stay away from St. John's until the finals. So hey, now you would have to potentially meet UConn, which that arena will be 90% UConn fans. So that's a problem. But I don't know how long he's going to coach. He's got a lot of interest outside basketball. I've heard somebody threw his name out there at Arizona State. If Hurley left, I don't know. I don't know that he wants to go into any kind of long-term, fix up a program type thing. Maybe,
Sure.
but
Yeah.
I don't think so. He's got it really good here, and I think the big thing to him would be how that portal works out this year. If they can add a couple pieces in the portal, get one of those Europeans they're after, and then they've got a Hudson Greer coming in as 5-star guard. If Pop comes back, that's a pretty good team next year. I know you're losing Kalkbrenner and Athworth and Neal, but that you can, that's a pretty good team that'll be, and I think he'd be excited about that. It just depends if what he wants to do, but he can do whatever he wants. Like, there's going to be. And by the way, this is his best coaching job ever at Creighton. This is what he did this year is tremendous.
Couldn't agree more. And there's definitely some work to do in the offseason, but if you're going to peg anybody who's going to be able to make the right moves and put the right team together and then coach them into being competitive for the tournament, Greg McDermott is going to be high up on that list. So, Tim, thank you so much for joining us.
Can I ask one very quick question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Very quick, Tim.
Go ahead.
And nobody is going to care about this, so sorry, listeners. Ohio Valley Conference, who do you guys have coming out of there?
Oh, man. Hold on. Let me pull it up.
Is it SEMO or is it SIUE?
Well, we've got SEMO as the team right now.
Okay.
They won the conference.
Okay.
I asked, Rocco Miller's our kind of mid-major guru, and so I work with him on the bottom seeds, getting all those done ahead of time. And I actually asked him about SEMO. I said, "Are they going to be it?" And he goes, "Yeah." I think there's a possibility that might be a conference with an upset. So he didn't list the team, but certainly Edwardsville's one that jumps into mind.
Good, go Cougars.
So, hey, banner brackets tonight. Just go on YouTube. Banner brackets starting at 5:00. We go all night. You're going to see a lot of the seating going on. I don't know if we'll get down far enough for Creighton tonight, but maybe. So that might be something to check in on. That would probably be later in the night, but we'll certainly get into some bubble talk with Nebraska. So
love that.
Yeah.
All right, banner brackets, bracketfield.com. Tim Krueger, thank you so much, my man. We'll see you next week when we're going to be 3 days away from Selection Sunday. We'll talk to you then, okay?
All right, man. Bye.
All right. Talk to you, Tim. All righty. Well, we still got a lot to cover here. College basketball.